Be seated, please, and it is my pleasure to call forward our brand new president, Eric Roher.
Thank you, Rabbi. Mazel tov to May and her wonderful family. You read beautifully this morning. And congratulations also to Jeff for his beautiful reading. Parsha V'Hetz, as the Rabbi indicated, which May and Jeff read so beautifully today, contains a range of themes and relevant topics for all of us to learn from. In this week's Torah portion, as you've heard, the narrative focuses on Jacob. He has his father's blessing and is on his way to his relatives in Haran. He will fall in love, and he himself will be deceived. He will serve a master, yet his wages will be uncertain. While this story of classical charm speaks to us of human thoughts and deeds, the central message of the story is Jacob's resilience and his fortitude. Jacob was a man whose greatest visions came to him when he was alone at night, far from home, fleeing from one danger to another. And as the Rabbi indicated, this parsha opens with Jacob using a rock as a pillow, utterly destitute and completely alone. Jacob is running from one of the central truths of his life. His mother has been willing to take advantage of his passivity to manipulate him at the cost of his good relationships with the rest of his family. That night, Jacob has a dream and tells him that God will stay with him wherever he goes. And when he wakes up, Jacob declares, "Truly, the Eternal is in this place, and I did not know it." Even though everything is going against Jacob at this point, we don't see him giving up hope. He is naturally resilient. He will wake up and realize the truth of his life and grow from this experience. And that is the central message of today's parsha. Jacob ultimately arrives at his uncle Laban's household. When he's brought back to the house, he tells Laban everything that's happened. And after listening, Laban replies, "You are truly my bone and my flesh." And while Laban immediately recognizes his sister's handiwork in Jacob's story, Jacob does not understand that this story is part of a larger pattern in his family. Jacob is not aware that his mother has been taking advantage of his passivity, a family pattern that he will need to transcend. Not eager to take the initiative or forge a new path, Jacob stays with his uncle for a lengthy period of time. At first, it seems like a mutually beneficial relationship. Jacob agrees to work for Laban for 7 years to marry Rachel. But Jacob does not realize that trickery is part of the dynamic with his mother's family. He doesn't suspect that his uncle might be manipulating him. One might think that he would be savvier and more alert at this point. Well, why doesn't he recognize the truth of the situation? It's especially difficult to rise above family patterns as they feel so familiar and comforting, even patterns that do not serve us and prevent us from reaching our full potential. Following Laban's instructions probably felt like following his mother's instructions. She would tell him what to do, and he obeyed without questioning. It does not occur to Jacob to question his uncle or his motives. When his two wives, Leah and Rachel, engage in a desperate battle of fertility, Jacob does not yet have the skills needed to navigate that rivalry. All of them come from the same branch of the family. Each has grown up with their designated role in the family's dysfunction. We get the sense that Jacob does not know how to speak up for himself or navigate interpersonal difficulties. When Rachel, Jacob's favorite wife, confronts him with the evidence that he's been helping Leah bear son after son, he shrugs off her pain, saying, "Am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" Jacob would rather dismiss Rachel's pain than risk an uncomfortable conversation with Leah. Rabbi Carrie Tooling has pointed out that there are a set of truths about Jacob that this parsha brings to light. One, he avoids confrontation. 2, he does not force issues. And 3, he prefers to trick someone rather than to admit the truth. Eventually, Jacob figures out how to move past these generational patterns that were holding him back, preventing him from taking responsibility for his own future, keeping him from navigating the complicated dynamics between his wives. Jacob's insight appears to come to him rather suddenly. Jacob realizes that his uncle Laban has been taking advantage of him. He makes plans to leave and talks to both of his wives to be sure he has their support. It turns out that Rachel and Leah have their own grievances against their father and are happy to leave their father's household. They even speak as one in spite of their own rivalry. Jacob does not realize that, in fact, Laban has cheated Rachel and Leah as well, selling them as concubines rather than giving them the full status of wives. Laban had pocketed Jacob's wages instead of doing the right thing for his daughters and giving them money as a dowry. Finally, having this conversation allows all three to admit these truths. They recognize each other's pains, and they work together to leave Laban. It's a rare moment of truth for the family, and it pushes them to grow in ways they hadn't thought possible. Thus, Jacob decides to leave Laban's household and face his brother, while Rachel and Leah agree to stop engaging in their rivalry. They all grow from this difficult conversation. There is a lot to learn from this week's Parsha, but most of all, we learn that living is about learning to transcend ourselves, our lives, and our limitations to leave a legacy worthy of the next generation. A Hebrew variation of the word nehag is a driver, one who steers the vehicle. Before a leader can responsibly and successfully drive others, one has to responsibly and effectively drive oneself. That is what Jacob spends his lifetime doing. He fails many, many times, but ultimately he emerges with the name Yisrael and becomes the patriarch whose very name is passed on to the Jewish people. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs wrote a wonderful text on the lessons of leadership, drawing on the weekly Torah portions for his insight into the nature of leadership. Among other things, he pointed out that we all of us are called on to be leaders within our own sphere of influence, be it your family, be it your community, work with colleagues, even play with on a particular team. Rabbi Sachs pointed out that what distinguishes a leader from a non-leader is not position or office or role, but rather a basic attitude to life. Rabbi Splansky has pointed out that the Hebrew word for leadership, manhigat, is connected to the word behave, lahitnageg. She taught us that it comes from the word to conduct oneself. In this way, leadership is directly related to behavior. And what Rabbi Splansky has said is, in Jewish terms, leadership has more to do with how one does than what one does. I am honored and humbled to be installed as president of Holy Blossom Temple. This is the first synagogue in Toronto. We are in a community filled with leaders in their respective fields, a beacon of Canadian Jewish life that is known all over the globe. Our greatest resource is our amazing members. Our people are doers, thinkers, givers, volunteers, and leaders for so many causes. With clergy throughout our long history that embody rabbinic and cantoral excellence, Holy Blossom is a symbolic exemplar of the Reform Jewish world. I am grateful for this tremendous privilege and responsibility this congregation has bestowed on me. And I am mindful of the historical Jewish giants whose leadership has elevated Holy Blossom to be internationally recognized and whose shoulders we all now stand on. All of our members have a Holy Blossom story, and it was wonderful to hear May's Holy Blossom story from her trip from Turkey. Her family's trip from Turkey. I came from a multi-generational Holy Blossom family. The Roher family has a long history at the temple, which includes the Roher library and the Roher stained glass window in the sanctuary. So it's called the Enlightenment window. It's on the far right of the sanctuary above by the rose window. It's the farthest window to the right. And it was dedicated on February the 21st, 1958, in memory of our cousins Lionel Roher and Martin Roher. Lionel was only 19 when his Royal Canadian Air Force plane crashed in Dauphin, Manitoba in June 1941. It was the day after he qualified for his wings. Martin Roher, his brother, died of an illness in 1954 at the early age of 30. The window, which is just spectacular, focuses on the Age of Enlightenment and is a portrait of German Jewish philosopher Moses Mendelssohn at its center. This sanctuary, this room that we're in today, has represented a constant thread in the life of our family. In 1953, just 71 years ago, my parents were married in this very room by Rabbi Feinberg. I had my bar mitzvah in this sanctuary with Rabbi Plaut. 1967. 1983, Beth and I were married in this sanctuary by Rabbi Prosnit. Our three daughters, Jessica, Rebecca, and Sophie, were bat mitzvahed on this bima. And our two granddaughters, I'm starting to cry, Eva and Ruby, were named in this sanctuary. So I grew up at Holy Blossom. I attended the religious school under the iconic leadership of Heinz Warschauer, the temple's former director of education. And I have incredibly strong memories of my grandparents taking me and Kevin and Susie and my sister Joanne to religious school on Sunday mornings. And it's completely surreal for me to be taking my granddaughter Eva to her senior kindergarten class here on Sunday mornings. My wife Beth, our three children, Jessica, Rebecca, and Sophie have all been actively engaged in temple activities. I've been on the board of directors and an active gabbai at services for many years. So for the past 2 years, I've been working closely under the attentive eye of Phyllis Denenberg, our incredible former president, to learn and understand the complexities, roles, and responsibilities of temple leadership. This is both an exciting and challenging time to take a leadership role at Holy Blossom. Our membership is growing, and it is growing younger. Our outreach and next generation initiative has become a major success. We currently have over 1,860 households, 226 of which are new members over the past year. We have more than 200 families in the Truma category of membership, which are households with children age 8 and under. Our membership has grown 20% in the last 3 years. So by any measurement, any congregation in North America or any other organization, this is an amazing accomplishment. The events of October 7th have galvanized the Canadian Jewish community. We have learned that engagement is about building a vibrant, inclusive community where we feel strongly connected to our congregation because we are actually connected to each other. Engagement is about fostering relationships that motivate all of us to live meaningful and impactful Jewish lives. So as I start my term as president, this is an excellent opportunity to think about where we want to be in the next 5, 10, or 15 years from a membership or operational perspective. And we have to start to have these important, even difficult discussions. There are, very briefly, 4 projects that we're currently working on. One, we have a strategic development and allocations task force, which includes the chair of our finance committee, Aviv Haras, and our amazing foundation president, Joan Garson, who you saw earlier. And this committee is taking a hard look at our finances and the financial sustainability of the temple. It's a very important strategic initiative. Number 2, we have the creation of our Code of Ethics Committee, chaired by longtime member Bonnie Goldberg, which will review and implement our new Temple Code of Ethics. 3, we are creating a new leadership development program that not only identifies potential leaders, but provides our next leaders with the necessary skills to take on leadership roles at Holy Blossom. And lastly, In 2031, we will be celebrating the 175th anniversary of Holy Blossom Temple. So we are now starting to plan and think about new initiatives and programs to recognize this amazing milestone. I am learning that the role of Temple President is holy and sacred work. Chapter 2.2 of Pirkei Avot states, "Let all who work for the congregation do so for the sake of heaven." When board members, who you all saw up earlier, when board members work with each other and with our professional partners and staff at Holy Blossom, sharing responsibilities and obligations, we strengthen this congregation. I am part of a superb leadership team with Rabbi Splansky, our senior rabbi, Rachel Malik, our executive director, representing our talented clergy and professional staff. I'm blessed not only to have a strong board who are installed with me today, but we have incredible vice presidents who will be there with me every step of the way. And let me just specifically mention Senior Vice President Eric Klein, who has been an invaluable resource to this congregation, and he will be helping me lead over the next 2 years. It appears we are entering the era of the Erics. Rabbi Splansky has pointed out that in Jewish life, customs are not only for remembering the past, but they are also for guiding the future. For example, in the joyful custom of lighting Hanukkah candles is not only for celebrating the religious freedoms secured by the Maccabees in the 2nd century BCE, but the simple act of lighting those thin candles is powerful enough to illuminate our own Jewish identity and to lead us towards the commitments we make in our own lives. So we learn a lesson in leadership from the Shamash of the Hanukkah. The Shamash is set apart to play a unique and leading role. It isn't a sacred candle itself, but it demonstrates a humble and steadfast commitment to bring greater light into our world. As the first synagogue in Toronto, Holy Blossom Temple has inherited a legacy of courageous and compassionate leadership. Our new board is committed to working diligently to continue this extraordinary legacy. Shabbat Shalom.